A Rico charge. This stands for racketeer, influenced, and corrupt organization. So
that breaking news, President Trump indicted for alleged election meddling in Georgia.
We're always going to have organized crime. Always. As long as the human being has certain appetites for gambling, pornography, or whatever, someone's always going to surface to serve these needs.
What is the connection between Donald Trump and Tony Soprano?
Charged under racketeering laws, very much what you'd ordinarily be used to kind of seeing in mob-type setup.
A Wall Street Journal investigation into Donald Trump's business career finds the GOP presidential nominee sometimes dealt with people connected to organized crime in his Atlantic City and New York real estate work.
Donald Trump sought to run U.S. foreign policy the way Tony Soprano ran his crime family.
It sounds like Donald Trump is talking like a mafia boss, and not a particularly smart mafia boss at that.
His use of the term rat for Michael Cohen and mischaracterizing this as a break into his attorney's office, frankly makes him sound more like a mob boss than President of the United States.
That's the language of a mobster, not of the president.
Or it could even be this.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
But the real connection is Rico.
The Rico Act.
The Rico Case.
Been building a Rico case against Tony Soprano.
And albeit that The Sopranos is a fictional tale, Rico is very real, and it's being used on Donald Trump. It's not even Donald Trump himself, it includes his lawyers, and there are 41 counts. And according to the New York Times, that includes 22 counts of forgery and false documents, 8 counts of soliciting or impersonating public officers, 3 to influencing witnesses, 3 counts of defrauding the state, 3 counts of computer tampering, we'll come back to that later, then there's racketeering and perjury. It literally reads like something out of the mafia. Rico was originally created to deal with the mafia. In fact, it was created in the 1980s to deal with the 5 families, all related to New York, including one particular gangster known as John Gotti, who avoided the conviction in the 80s but was eventually caught in 1992 under 14 charges of conspiracy to commit murder and racketeering. And in The Sopranos, they managed to get Rico Soprano, as well as Johnny Sack. Now originally this was a federal law, but states took up the Rico as well, to use it in state law, including Georgia. And step 1 for a Rico charge is identifying an illegal activity. And I'm going to show you that illegal activity shortly. According to Georgia law, there's got to be at least 2 underlying felonies, such as fraud, bribery, murder, or witness tampering. The next step would be to show that there was a bigger plan involved, and it wasn't an isolated incident. For the mafia, this became a real problem, because guys facing prosecution started ratting on each other and becoming government witnesses or confidential informants in exchange for reduced prison time and even keeping some of their financial assets. And this is what we're starting to see with Donald Trump, and why there is a huge list of attorneys, because the government are hoping at least one of them will rat out the other. But is it really important? And as I said earlier, I've got something to show you which involves Donald Trump and his phone call. He called the Secretary of State of Georgia and pressured him to find votes so that Trump could win Georgia. The next day, the call was leaked.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
And I believe this is a smoking gun in the case that is going to convict him, because he's asking for a specific number, and that number would overturn the election in his favour. Instead of just going in and saying, can you please check the machines, I'm hearing all sorts of rumours, I want to make sure this is a fair election, which would have absolved him of the crime and made him more akin to an actual mafia boss with some savviness, he instead implicates himself as attempting to overturn an election illegally.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated.
President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
Now, do you think it's possible that they shredded ballots in Fulton County? Because that's what the rumor is. And also that Dominion took out machines. Dominion is really moving fast to get rid of their machinery. Do you know anything about that?
Georgia lawyer Ryan Germany shot that down.
No, Dominion has not moved any machinery out of Fulton County. We're having.
But have they moved the inner parts of the machines and replaced them with other parts?
No.
You sure, Ryan?
Doesn't that just sound desperate?
I'm sure.
He then threatened them.
You know what they did and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense. That's a big risk to you and to Ryan, your lawyer. That's a big risk.
So what do you think of that phone call? Put your thoughts in the comments or in the live chat. And here is what Donald Trump thinks.
Where Donald Trump had said he wanted him to find 11,780 votes. He's since, and as recently as today, described that as a perfect telephone call.
The 14 indictments include racketeering, attempting to get an officer to break his oath, conspiracy, and pressuring lawmakers. The involvement of others was quite interesting. It included Rudy Giuliani, Trump's former lawyer, his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, former White House lawyer John Eastman, and Jeffrey Clark, who ironically worked for the Justice Department. According to the documents, this rowdy bunch of misfits were all giving instructions to different groups to disenfranchise the vote. Now, with all of this, when you have a presidential election, it isn't just as simple as everyone votes and it counts. Each state is meant to have representatives from the state come in and vote based on how their constituency voted. That's why the elections in the United States can be quite complicated. It's not a simple majority wins. Trump came up with the wacky idea of getting fake electoral voters to step in the place of real ones and vote against Joe Biden. His lawyers also attempted to rig the system electronically by using false data and putting it into machines. The very thing that Donald Trump was warning everyone about, he was doing himself with his crazy gang. And now Trump is a wanted man by the District Attorney of Georgia. Have a listen.
The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result. Subsequent to the indictment, as is the normal process in Georgia law, the grand jury issued arrest warrants for those who are charged. I am giving the defendants the opportunity to voluntarily surrender no later than noon on Friday, the 25th day of August, 2023.
So far, building this case has taken 2.5 years, which is interesting because
Major Rico against Tony Soprano. Those things take years to build. This recent case against Joe Messino in New York, that was 7 years before indictments were handed down.
But the speed in which this is taking place is because there's a statute of limitations which says you've got 5 years to prosecute someone for this type of criminality. Otherwise, it passes and you can't get them. Bear in mind he's now running for president. It also means there's a time limit that's very, very restricted in building this case and putting it forward. But it's incredible to see that the President of the United States is being prosecuted and charged and has to put himself in front of the Georgia police and district attorney within a few days. To be fair to the Donald Trump camp, we really should have a listen as to what their justification is for all of these activities.
They are taking away President Trump's First Amendment right to free speech and the right to challenge a rigged and stolen election that the Democrats do all the time. The ones who should be prosecuted are the ones who created the corruption.
You might rightly ask, is there a way out of this? Well, there are, but I don't think he's going to have much luck. He could claim for a mistaken identity, but we've heard the phone call, so there's little chance of that happening. He could try and claim that there's no pattern of racketeering activity. Unfortunately for him, this is the 4th charge against him this year, and it's the 2nd that's similar to the charges being made in Georgia. They could turn around and say that there's no criminal organisation, that it wasn't a group, and essentially it was just one person acting on their own.
Family, I told you, they're a glorified crew.
But with little time to prepare, there's little chance of this actually taking place, and I can quite easily see one of them ratting out the rest, and that no one is going to take the fall for the entire group. Overall, what this reminds me of is this slightly horribly iconic moment between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Probably down to his fraud charges, but more likely, and I would hope, visiting him whilst he's behind bars. If this is the second one of my videos, or you've reached this far in the video, please click that like and subscribe button. It really makes a difference. To all my Patreon and YouTube members, I just want to say a big thank you because you're awesome and you help this channel grow and keep on going. Bye for now.